Facebook. We want to say happy Thanksgiving to everyone in the US and everyone who's celebrating Thanksgiving. But also, this is a great opportunity for all of us, no matter where we reside, to just take a minute and to be thankful for life, be thankful for family, be thankful for all our stress and our problems, because it means that we are still alive. Right? So, again, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us for Roots Connections on Q95. It is great to be back with you as we continue to explore what in the world around us is changing and evolving. What are the challenges and opportunities, especially financial opportunities, that these changes are bringing to us? And how can we engage our Dominican experts at home and abroad to guide us on these important changes? Of course, we continue to pray for our brothers and sisters out there in the east of Dominica who were impacted by the heavy rains and the landslides. And we also keep in mind Kanisha Etienne, our little daughter. We still haven't found her, as well as all the other vulnerable children in Dominica. So today we have another packed 2 hours of programming for you. Today we are asking questions and we're making observations. But the most important thing we're looking at today is, can controlling the mindset of the people be a political strategy? So I know we've been having a lot of these conversations about the snap election that has been called and about everything that is going on the ground in Dominica. But when we look at the political landscape in Dominica, I think it begs the question, is changing and controlling the mindset of Dominicans part of a political strategy to keep the current government in power? So we have a lot of questions to delve into today. We are going to look at what factors are contributing to the mindset change we have witnessed in Dominica. Because let's face it, when we look at the mindset from back in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and even beyond then, I think we can see that we had a lot more independent thinkers, people who could make decisions on their own without being influenced by political favor, right? So we're going to look at what are the contributing factors to this mindset change that we're seeing in Dominica, the role of maybe the churches, organizations, business, everything that may be contributing to this mind change. And we're also going to look at the implications for individuals, organizations, and the wider society. And in particular, I'm very happy Mr. Paul Barron is here, because he's someone who speaks very adamantly in favor of youth development. I want to look at how does this impact not only this generation of Dominicans, but the future generations of Dominicans that will come when we are no longer here. So as you can tell, we have a lot to unpack together. And of course, we're looking forward to your contribution to the discussion via Facebook and your calls this evening. So again, welcome to Roots Connections on Q95. This is episode number 37 for today, November 23rd, 2022. And I am your host, Simone Mathieu. Good evening to our listeners around the world. If you're joining us on Facebook and YouTube, or if you're interested in joining us, you can also always join us at Q95 FM Radio and Push Past 10 on Facebook, as well as Q95 FM Radio on YouTube. And don't forget, for the best in programming, you can check out Q95DA.com anytime. So the best in current programming, as well as any episodes of our programs you may have missed. So for example, last program, we looked at beyond peeling fig and dashing, how we can take advantage of advances in agriculture, such as agro-processing. So we're very happy. We're happy that our panel has taken some time out of their busy schedule to join us and to make a contribution to our program. This evening, we have Dr. Margaret Triphi Wallace out there in Atlanta, Georgia. And we also have Mr. Paul Barron. We were expecting Mr. Simeon Joseph, as well as Miss Marisa Steadman, but we have not yet seen them. So hopefully they will join us at some point. But I think, our panel will adequately be able to handle this topic. So I have no concerns that we will be able to fully handle these topics. So again, we want to thank them for being here, and we ask that they unmute their mics and just greet us and just kind of give us a general feel of the topic this evening.
Hello, hello. Since my mic is already unmuted, hi everybody. How are you? I'm Dr. Triphi. I'm a licensed psychologist in Atlanta, Georgia, and a licensed professional counselor. Of course, I'm from Dominica, and I am happy to be here this evening.
Yes.
So where do you want us to start, Dr.
Yes,
Simone?
just your general feeling on the topic. What is your general thought on the topic this evening?
Well, I'll tell you this. I have a heavy heart when I think about this topic because I go by evidence more so than what somebody says to me or what somebody might, promise or describe. I want to see the results.
Mm-hmm.
So as I look at Dominica and as I look at the results with the root upon which the trajectory that our culture seems to be taking, it's not a positive. It's not positive and upward and elevating. In my mind, the way I describe it a lot is like we are penché over a cliff. Penché means you're about to go over the cliff if we haven't yet. And I think there are many reasons for that. I think there are many ways we can address it, and we ought to address it as community.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yes, yes. And I'm happy you mentioned that, because one of the things I want to make sure we cover this evening is the cool out culture that this new mindset has created in Dominica, where now we're hearing the elections being called, and the first thing you're hearing folks asking, even the independent candidates, oh, you want me to vote for you? Where's my cool out? So to me, this dependency on the government has created an entire new culture
Yeah.
of begging, of dependence, of relying on others for our own sustenance. So we have a lot to discuss this evening. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Paul, you want to chime in?
Hi, good evening, Simone, and good evening, Dr. Triphi, Margaret, Wallace. I believe that is the first time I am being acquainted to you. I want to continue to wish you the very best in your endeavors.
Thank you.
Just by way of introduction, my name is Paul Barron, and I'd like to think I'm no stranger to the Dominica political landscape. I've been involved in politics since I was 15 years old, but I tend to consider it as being leadership rather than politics. I
Mm-hmm.
take it to mean that politics is an honorable profession. However, the current situation confronting, or rather that which we experience in Dominica, politics have seemed to become something of sort of like a sort of expedient profession to advance the interests of specific individuals and of course of various interest groups. I do believe that your topic is very timely, especially on the heels of a general elections. What I considered as being is that we have seen that over the period of 20 years span, there has been a deliberate attempt by those who are what I consider to be the powers that be to seamlessly brainwash the population, but more importantly, to keep their focus away from the actual core practices that are transpiring right beneath their eyes. What happens on a day-to-day situation or on a day-to-day experience in Dominica is that individuals find themselves being chronically dependent on the state for every aspect of their lives, and that is something that is entirely new to the Dominica culture, because my father and mother always taught me of the experience of the Dominica man or the Dominica woman, and it always involves utilizing your skills and your talents and your treasures to advance your own personal cause, but also for the benefit of your families. So what we've seen is that the Dominican culture has been sort of I would consider it as being more mummified, in the sense that It is non-existent as we once knew it. And it's very important to understand that this transpired over a 20-year period. And that, I think, is what you can consider as being the case study. You can weigh Dominica's experience before, when you, forgive me, no offense intended, but when you were born in the 70s, the 60s, and the 80s, you know that the experience that you would have had is vastly different now. The sad reality further is that those who are becoming victims almost on a daily basis is our young generations, our millennials, persons who are just living, transitioning from high school into the tertiary education system. And I dare say also graduate and higher education advocates. So we are at a dangerous point in our development, rather in the course of history, and it will depend and to a large extent, individuals like you, Dr. Triphi, and Simone as well, to sort of continue to inform and educate the population on what is more important, and that
Mm-hmm.
is keeping the social fabric very alive, morals and values, and also being able to position and to sort of uh, groom and mentor the younger generation so that we can not repeat these mistakes anymore. But more importantly, we can place the next generation on a greater, better trajectory. So that's
Yes.
how I feel about it.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, Paul. So I can tell we have a lot to unpack today. And I think we've been making these observations for a while now. I think we've been witnessing
Yes.
the change in mindset. But the question, I want to dig a little deeper into this conversation. So I think we've been making the observations, we've been talking about the observations, but I want to dig a little deeper and I want to consider whether we think that this is a political strategy, right? So I want to know, for example, if the fact that Dominicans are now dependent on the government for just about every aspect of their life, is that a political strategy? Is that done intentionally so that folks have no other choice? Because if I'm paying your rent, if I'm putting food on your table, if I am sending your children to school, if I'm giving you a house to stay in, do you really have a choice but to vote me back into government? So I want us to take a deeper look into this. And Dr. Triphi, I know you're ready to jump in, but let me just go ahead and thank a few more people, and then we're going to jump right into the conversation. So, of course, we're grateful for Mr. G and the Q95 family for the opportunity to come together every second and fourth Wednesday as we tap into the human resources of our experts, and we discuss topics of national and personal importance. And we also take that first step in reversing the brain drain, bringing all our talents and all our skills back to our beautiful island, Dominica, virtually. Of course, we thank Lambi on the console, and we also thank Mr. Sherwin Norris, as well as DJ Shan, who are working in the background. So again, we are back to the question, are we, number one, witnessing a change in mindset in Dominica? What is the evidence? Is this a political strategy? What is contributing to the change in mindset that we are seeing in Dominica? And before we delve into the topic, Dr. Triphi, I want to start with you as we talk about what are we referring to when we talk about our mindset, and how does that impact our daily lives and everything else that we do in life. And of course, Paul, if you want to make a contribution, you can feel free to jump in after Dr. Triphi.
So, mindset is your core beliefs about yourself, your core beliefs about life. Who do I think I am? Do I think I am capable? Do I think I am competent? Do I think I am worthy? Do I think I am lovable? Do I think I am good enough? Do I think getting gifts are okay? Do I think I need to earn what I make? These are examples of what mindset looks like. So, in psychology, we will say that there are two main categories of belief systems that can trap us. And that's whether or not fundamentally you believe you are worthy, whether you are lovable. Hmm? And number two, whether or not you think you are capable, you're good enough, you can take care of yourself. So if you look at that in context with the Dominican population, the way it used to be, let's say 20 years ago, I'm talking about my generation.
Mhm.
I was born in 1970. And what I saw in the park the other day, where a young lady was demanding that the leader of the government put his hand in his pocket and give her a cool out before she gave a vote. So she was saying, I need something first before I give you anything. When I grew up, people in my generation were completely for you earning your keep, working hard. Everybody had their chores assigned to them. You had to do certain things. Everybody in the family had their tasks, right? You could not leave your home and, even if it was a neighbor, go beg. Begging was frowned upon to such a degree that even if you were hungry and you had gone over to your neighbor's home, your parents would say to you, even if your stomach is making puke, it's like the rumbling of your belly, even if your stomach is rumbling, say no and wait to come home.
And Dr. Triphi, let me chime in just for a second, and Paul, you can chime in as well as we go along. It was to the point when I was growing up, true story, my adopted grandmother would say to my mother, Mass and House, don't let them cut your Domlek lights. If you don't have anything to cook in your house, put your pressure cooker on the stove and put some season in the pot and let
Yeah,
it smell up the neighborhood so people
yeah,
will think you have food in your house. Don't
that's
go
right.
beg nobody.
That's
Just
right.
put it on, feed your children the little bread and squash
Yes.
lime juice that you
Yeah.
have. It's Sunday. Everybody is expecting, your house to smell like you're cooking. Put your pot with a little seasoning. Make sure you pay your bills because folks didn't have money.
Yeah.
But did I know who my pal rep was? No. We never knew the concept of going to a pal rep because we all had the concept of independence instilled in us. Go ahead, Dr. Triphi.
Yes. And so it hurt my heart. And, I've been hearing over the years about this pull out culture, and it seems like it was whispered about. But after 20 years, like Mr. Barron is saying here, the system, that new way has become mummified. It's solid. It's in place now. It's in place now. And it is evidenced by the fact that young people are begging. They're debasing themselves to the point where they are screaming, yelling, I want money. I was looking at an ad for a parliamentarian to be, and the ad said, we will be going bar hopping
Hmm.
and we're offering, I guess, as the enticement, free drinks. Free drinks. That's how far we've come. Let me tell you, I'm still in shock. I am still in shock because what I'm saying is you would hear whispers of things being done under the table. We have become so brave with what I call toxicity that we're doing it now in broad daylight. And to make it even worse, I am hearing adult people who seem quite articulate defending these actions. So that for me gives me a read on where we are as a culture, and it's not a pretty thing. It's
Yeah,
not.
and thank you, Doc. And let me come over to you, Paul. And
Yeah.
you know, one of the reasons that I'm saying that this is a political strategy is when I saw that same post that you referenced, there were many comments underneath the post that said, "This is not who this young lady is. She is not the young lady who
Right.
would entice people to come to the bar for free drinks." So it
Yeah.
almost sounds like it was part of a strategy that was over her head that she had been mandated to execute. Paul, your thoughts?
And you know, you're very correct to suggest that. And I'll answer your question. The blatant truth is that it is in fact a strategy. Um, for the benefit of Dr. Triphi, I spent, and for the larger Dominican public who may not know that, I've spent 20 years with the DLP.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I consider it has been an opportunity for me to have learned. I see them as my biggest project on the basis that I needed to understand exactly what was going on with this organization. It's important to understand that the DLP is a leftist party, yeah? And I think sometimes we forget that. The DLP is a leftist party and it borrows its principles from the bowels of communism.
Mm.
Uh, what the late Prime Minister Rosie Douglas would have sought to do was to usher in social democracy, which is sort of like a watering down of communism for obvious reasons, because Dominicans have always stood in defiance of communism. And there are many examples of that. There are many leaders who have championed the cause of not going down that route. It's important to understand the basic principle of show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. Dominica's foreign policy has been squarely focused on parties who have a greater affinity or leaning towards the left, which involves some aspect of communism. China, we know in most cases Cuba, we know Venezuela, and of course the recent uh, alignment with our government to some of the Middle Eastern countries who are heavy handed on their population or on their people for that matter. So what has resulted in Dominica is basically taking out of the playbook of this version of communism, which is considered to be, and as far as the academics is concerned, neo-communism. It is something that can sort of stand its ground in the 21st century, but not receive such how you call it, harsh critics from the
Negative.
international, yeah, negative critics from the international community, because the actions of the Dominican Labour Party clearly states that. For example, in economics, we know that too much government interference in an economy is unhealthy for it.
Mm-hmm.
What it means is that it floods the money, it introduces new money new supplies of money which does not have an income earning ability or interest bearing ability. And we see that with the housing program specifically, because the attempt to house the support base of the Dominican Labour Party has crippled the banking sector. So rather than persons going for a mortgage, which will in turn spur economic activity, they almost feel an entitlement to owning a house. And I'll say housing because housing is the major sort of what I consider as being like what lowers the population, because one thing the DLP uses skillfully as well is its propaganda machinery, which is very endemic to communism as well.
Mhm.
What it means is that it glorifies the leader, so the leaders seem to be as supreme, almost sort of like a demigod, for lack of a better way of putting it. Whereas the population is unaware of the mishandling of the business of the government, the vast corrupt practices, a sudden shift in the political class whereby families and interest groups become extremely wealthy over a period of time. Lucrative contracts are given to certain individuals, and the list goes on and on. So the propaganda machinery always puts the DLP at a position of being the best party, having the best candidates and policies, I dare say as well. But it negates the fact that all it does is really shows people an image. And
Mhm.
what the leadership of the party has done, and Dominicans need to be aware of, is His sort of academic training has been very evident in his leadership, right? So what it means, therefore, is that image, the eyes, what you see is catching and appealing. And as such, the population is squarely focused on seeing a lot of good things, best dressed women and men, politicians, engaging in activities. Every meeting is posted, every engagement is posted. But what
Social
fails to
media.
happen is the decisions that are taken does not trickle down to the population. And we have to understand that the population that stands to be the most disadvantaged is the working class, or what is referred to as the proliferate, the working class, the masses of Dominica, the men and women, the farmers, the fisher folks, the construction employees, the laborers, the carpenter, the masonry, the shopkeeper, the hairdresser, the cosmetic,
Cosmetologist.
the nail experts, the barbers, the vendors on the roadside. The vast majority of Dominicans are regressing and becoming more and more impoverished. So it is a strategy. Now, what I need to understand, what I need Dominicans to understand, both in Dominica and abroad, is the attempt or the beginning to see through the lies is where you will begin to understand what is going on. And I'd like to encourage Dominicans as well. Do not listen to a single radio station or do
Right.
not follow a single Facebook page or influencer. Interestingly, my mom and I was having a discussion today. I was before on the farm, and she was listening to the leadership of the party. So she knows I have my, how you consider my concerns, where that is concerned. And she's like, Paul, you have to listen to them, you listen to them, listen to the opposing side, and then you make your decision. And I think that is the most credible advice my mother could have given to me. And it is an advice I'd like to give to the vast majority of Dominicans. Try to understand, see through the information. Because the more important thing is that we all want to sort of bury our heads in the sand to think that there's nothing wrong with the Labour Party. And the Labour Party was sent from above, so to speak. But when we face the music, is when we dip our hand in our pocket and cannot buy a proper pound of chicken, or cannot make a meal, or our child is in need of something and cannot give it to them. We cannot gift our relatives and families on their birthday party. That is where it hits the fan. Because if you do not have any economic power, if you don't have purchasing power, why continue to support an administration that doesn't create the opportunities or does not present the policies to stimulate an economy which is at a jolting halt at this point
Yeah,
in time?
yeah, yeah, Paul. And I certainly agree with a lot of what you're saying, just about everything you've said,
Yeah.
especially when it relates to listening to both sides. Because, I've just been sitting back and just making some observations and just looking and seeing. And what you will find is that during this campaigning, for example, almost as immediately as something is said or done by the opposition, the same night that the campaign
Exactly.
trail is going on, you hear it repeated, which
Yeah.
Exactly.
means that part of the strategy is knowing what your enemy is up to. And then
I
I
Precisely.
also like, Dr. Chief, I'm coming to you. I also like that you mentioned that
yes,
propaganda machine,
yes.
because as a concerned citizen of Dominica, I follow everybody. And what
Yes.
you will see with regards to the propaganda machine is when the prime minister goes live on Facebook, the entire cabinet goes live. So that way, he who controls the narrative controls the media.
Yes.
Who
That's how
controls
it
the
is.
media, I should say, controls the narrative. So what happens is it blasts it out to all corners of the world. So you're getting to control the narrative.
Yeah.
So that is
E-
some of the things we
Even
have to
the
think of as a
even the
strategy.
international community is
Yes,
spellbound, brother.
yes.
If,
Yes.
I'm sorry,
And then,
Simone. I didn't mean
and
to
then
cut you off.
Yes, and then Dr. Chiffy, I'm coming to you, but I see we have a nice crowd on Facebook, so let's just take a pause and acknowledge them.
Oh, nice.
Patricia Fontaine, good day, all listening. Tina Bell de Ramon, always great to see you. Dorian Dorival, Anthony Simon, Ernest Letain, Franklin Revere, Viva Mamo, Pyro Pascal. Please feel free to post your comments. I see some of them are coming in already, but go ahead and join the conversation. Be a part of the conversation. And also, if you're planning on calling in as well, you can make a quick note of the contribution that you want to make, because I can tell this is going to be a topic which is of great interest to our current situation in Dominica. Dr. Triphi, let me come to you.
Yes. Okay. So this propaganda machine, I will say, I'll tell you my experience with it. So last election, as I've shared, I went to bat for the ruling Dominica Labour Party for many reasons. I thought Maria had just hit, they were already there. Let them finish this thing out. And this year, clearly, I am saying many different things and being very clear about my dissatisfaction, my disgust in certain cases, my terror for the people of Dominica if we continue on this path. Well, I will tell you, as soon as I started talking in that way, I started noticing, as soon as I would post, there are people who it seems who have been appointed and assigned the job on social media. That's my read on it, right? There are people who are assigned, and either they're being paid or they're either getting paid by money or getting paid with strokes or whatever it is, because you cannot be that consistent in your just automatic,
It's instant. It's instant,
instant,
Doc.
automatic defense of whatever it is somebody presents without processing, without thinking, oh, you might be right over here, although I disagree over there. It is like a drum beat. And the closer it seems that I started getting, people say the closer you get to a master, the louder the dog barks. And so as I have continued to speak more, the what you call it, the flattery was the first approach. Somebody, I think, in my estimation, was assigned
Mm-hmm.
to be the flatterer. That didn't work. I had people now start coming after me to the point where now I'm getting threats. I'm getting
Mm.
threats.
Yeah, that's how it's done.
Yeah. And so I say to myself, if I am experiencing this level and intensity and the ramping up of pushback,
Mhm.
and I'm all the way in Atlanta, nobody pays my salary, right? I'm not in Dominica. They're not seeing me every day. Much more for the person on the ground in Dominica who dares to have a dissenting thought. I'm
Mhm.
telling you all, I went home in the spring and people called me and to warn me and said they're going to say negative things about you. They're going to say you're a bad person, but please keep speaking up for us because we cannot speak. We
But
cannot speak.
I'm
Mhm.
happy you brought that up. Dominica's need a voice. I mean, I've had my fair share of retribution and persecution. When I think 2 years ago, when I had officially made it public to the Dominican society that I was no longer uh, that the policies and the values of the Dominica Labour Party is no longer consistent with my own internal system, which is driven by faith, as I think
Exactly.
every human being should be guided by faith, and his moral compass should be pointing in the right direction. But the level of victimization that occurs, I mean, it's people are afraid. Right now, the Dominican Labour Party is systematically reaching to its support base. And one of its support base is the National Employment Program, which is
Mhm.
a voluminous sort of attempt to engage person. But I must say, with respect to the benefits that are accrued, is really minimal. You're asking somebody to survive on $550 in some cases, and that part of the program is the largest. The Dominica Labour Party currently is seeking to meet with the groupings and subgroupings of that faction or that segment of the National Employment Program. And one of the things they're saying, silently or loudly or diplomatically, they're saying that if you don't vote for me, you're fired. Now, if you have a mother who has children, a man who has a responsibility to his family first before himself, the right to vote was fought on fiercely by our forefathers. People died and shed blood for these things. Universal suffrage is the right to vote, but to make a sober decision to vote. Someone should not vote under pressure or being held by the gun. And because of that, Dominicans and I really it breaks my heart to have learned that. You're telling the NEP workers that if you don't vote for me, you're fired. Okay? Now, I find the Labour Party to be at its weakest when it feels it is at its strongest, and I'll tell you why. You would have been in party, you'd have been in power for about 5 election cycles right now. You're supposed to have a report card which is unquestionable, right? But why this forcing and why this fighting and this mass campaigning? Really, for what?
Mhm.
Your opponents couldn't, I would think, if I was in that position, would not dare challenge an incumbent if it was at its strongest. And Dominicans need to understand that. There is no need for this mass campaigning and wasting of public funds in this election treating and election bribing. And so I hope that Dominicans will see this election as an opportunity to wake up. We will have more election cycles, and there are those among us who I believe will be called, you know. But currently, the situation confronting Dominicans is an attempt to hijack the government.
And
You know,
Paul, you are so right on track because you just made the very important point of why we need electoral reform. Because a vote is a sacred responsibility, right? So immediately it begs the question, how do you know who I voted for?
precisely.
So
Exactly.
that in itself is corruption because
Exactly.
my vote is supposed to be only between me and, well, God who sees
It's a
everything.
sacred vote.
But it begs the question,
Exactly.
why do you even know? How can you know who I voted for? Right? And the fact that you're willing to fire people
It's
because they
really
supposedly
unfortunate.
didn't vote for you. And
It's
Paul,
really
I'm also
unfortunate.
happy that you're here with us because something else that comes to mind, if you don't mind sharing, is why did you leave the Labour Party?
Yeah, that's a very good one. That's a question I
I'm
love
happy
answering,
you're
and,
here
and
with us.
you can see my obvious enthusiasm. My decision to leave the Labour Party was made 10 years before I actually left it, right? And I was having a conversation with my father, my beloved father, who is in the heavens, I would imagine. And we were looking at the Dominica experience. I was telling him to share with me the different time periods that political parties would have led. Um, the Dating way back to Mr. Seraphin, the
Mhm.
Dominica Freedom Party, the United Workers Party, and of course the DLP. And he was pointing to the fact that the governments of the past made it their priority to develop the country based obviously on its natural resource, which is by far and large arable lands and
Mhm.
a wide overflowing, overpouring supply of water. So he told me that agriculture was at the forefront of our national development thrust. And I thought at that point to be obviously true because we are surrounded by land. And he also told me that there was a lot of integrity in public office. So he said, for example, Mamo, as we know her, the Iron Lady, was a help me with that word.
Conservative.
Yeah, very much so. And she manage the affairs of the public to the letter, to the T. The
Scrupulous.
reason why is that the public service is a well-oiled machinery, which is very effective if it is allowed to do its job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I took some time with my father and I said, but it appears to me that I'm doing the wrong things, man, Dad. You
Good for
know,
you.
I said, Dad, I want to be able to be in a position of influence in Dominica, whereby I can bring about that level of change you're telling me about. And when I began to look at that, I saw how consistently the Labour Party was damaging the public service by putting a service within a service. And many
Mm.
people don't know that, but the NEP is a service within a service, which is an attempt to put strategic persons in office which could bend to the will of its masters.
Yeah.
And of course, get away with many, many unfortunate cases of corrupt practices, who in turn as well has no sort of does not have to answer to the supervisors, the various department heads, to the extent that if they were part of the public service, they're very dispensable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I began to understand those things, and I had a very one-on-one conversation with the leadership of the party, and I also had a conversation with the incumbent in the Salibia constituency. And I said to myself that, I'm no longer, I will no longer follow you, along
Mm,
this path.
Mm.
And I made that decision, and I've never regretted it. Of course, I had to transition, obviously, because I have my family and I also had my priorities in terms of launching my company and all those things. So timing was also very critical, but I found the most I created the perfect time by which I will transition. And now my responsibility, of course, is to search out avenues whereby I can continue to speak to the nation on that basis, but to let them understand that we have essentially created a monster in the Dominica context of politics, and something has to be done about it, and something
Mm-hmm.
has to be done very soon.
Yes, thank you so much, Paul. Thank you for that. Doc, I want to come to you, but we have a nice audience on the Facebook Live, so we want to
Yes.
just say good evening. And if you're just joining us on the radio as well, welcome aboard. So, what we are talking about, if you're just joining us, is there a political strategy in place to change and control the mindset, the thought process of Dominicans to keep them dependent on the current ruling party in Dominica to ensure that they keep voting in the same party over and over again? So we're going to take your calls at the top of the hour. We're also going to take your Facebook Live posts at the top of the hour as well. So keep your comments coming in. I see they're coming in quite nicely. So keep your comments coming in because we want you to be a part of the conversation as well. So, Doc, let me come to you. And then what I want to do this evening as well is a little bit of a comparative analysis. So let us look at that mindset that we're talking about prior to the 2000s. So let's look at the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, and even beyond. And then let's juxtapose that with what we are seeing today. So, as in to create the evidence that we're talking about, maybe the lack of evidence. Maybe this is just in our head, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's put the information out there so that our audience can make the decision as to if this is in fact what we are observing. So, Doc, I know you have a lot to say, so let me come to you.
Mr. Barron, I think,
Yes.
offered us the remedy, the antidote to this system, the antidote to the coercion by flattery, coercion by seduction of gifts and money, huh? Coercion by intimidation. You're not going to get that loan. You're going to lose your job. The antidote, the medicine, is your morality.
Yeah, man.
And that is perhaps why I'm telling y'all, there is one person who consistently shows up, who I believe is working for the DLP to come against every post that seems to make sense. This gentleman has been very thoughtful in all of his comebacks at me until the rum post, until that morality post. He became very emotional and called me a name.
Oh
And
man.
as a psychologist, I said, well, this is the one that had the most impact on you to
Yeah.
get you to shift from outside of your typical controlled self. Morality is the answer. Morality is what will tell a Labour supporter your prime minister came on your radio station, on your Facebook page, and promised your country, that includes you, promised you and every other citizen that he would not call elections until he had completed reforms of the process. What is going to save you when your prime minister does the opposite? Your morality, your ability to say, oh, he just lied. And that's what that is. It is a lie. So, what do I do with a person who lies to me? Do I go along with a person who lies to me? Or do I say to a person who lies to me, hey, do you realize you just lied to me? I don't appreciate it when people lie to me. What are you going to do about this? I need you to correct this lie.
Yeah.
It's
You
the
know that's
morality that's going to save Dominica.
Mhm.
And that is where we have a big pocket, a vacuum that political parties have filled. I think when we took off civics from the schools where kids, people, us, we were, everybody assigned our student companion. And we were all at least once a week for an hour, a Friday afternoon, discussing morality and building character was part of the curriculum. When that got pulled out, this meat that keeps people, your essence, the strength inside of you, if you don't have something to fall back on, what do you have? The word in Dominica is flow, like just chorus, like just there's nothing to support the rapid change of a kind of political system like that. We had never seen a political system where we were being used against each other,
Mhm.
where families were being encouraged to to destroy their relatives, to stay
Mhm.
mum when they saw wrong things happening to their relatives. That's a morality question.
Mhm.
And that is the answer for every Dominican citizen.
Mhm.
Use your morality to sift through these things. Now, again, for a huge swath of our population or younger population who did not have that kind of a stitch in time saves nine, and how do you know if your government is out of order if all of their friends are leaning communist? If you don't understand that birds of a feather flock together,
Mhm.
and show me your company if I want to tell you who you are.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
that's the remedy. That is the fix. That's the antidote.
Yeah, and Doc, while I have you on the mic, let me also say this to you because I follow you very closely on Facebook because you do a wonderful job of breaking down these concepts to us. So sometimes I catch you on the replay, like they say. I may not catch you live, but I catch you on the replay. And today on your program, you had a very interesting discussion because you were talking about, and I wrote it down, three ways people can victimize you. And you
Yes,
talked about flattery, guilt, and shame, and then they try to hurt you. So, kind of
yes,
just expand on that for us a little bit so we have a better sense. And someone, Anne, said it best on the Facebook Live. She said, education time, people,
yes,
please listen. And she stretched out the
yes,
N.
yes,
Dominicans, open your eyes and ears. Thanks Patriotic Panel. So
Yeah.
that is what we're here to do, because we spend so much time, having these discussions and going back and forth with each other, which is great. But are we taking some time to dig deeper, to look at the strategy that is behind everything that we're seeing? Because I don't think we can fully comprehend and combat what is going on until we get a full understanding of what we're dealing with. So, Doc, the 3 ways people can victimize
Yes.
you.
So today I talked about victimization. We talk about this all the time. Oh, they're victimizing me. They're victimizing people. And I think, you just hear like, wah, 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 victimizing. I didn't see them beat anybody up in the street. What do you mean they victimize them? It doesn't have to be bloody. If I have all of this power and I see you, this vulnerable citizen, we have many vulnerable citizens who have not spent time strengthening their moral center, or who might just be very trusting. A lot of our people are very trusting.
Mhm.
And I think we think people have our best interests at heart for the most part. So you have somebody with power coming to you and flattering you and telling you, man, you're the best at this. You are the perfect person for this, whatever, to do this for me. Man, I think you could be the guy who rounds up all the people in St. Thomas and tell them to come down to Dominica.
And
You're
and let
smart.
me chime in. Let me chime in, Doc, because do you think that
Yes,
is what is happening with all the young people? Paul, you can jump in as well. Do you think flattery is
absolutely.
what is happening with all the young people we're seeing on the political platform now?
That's the
Well,
first line of defense. That's the
yeah,
first attack. Go ahead.
Yes, Paul,
Michelle,
let's hear your thoughts. Doc, I'm coming back to you.
Yes.
just rephrase the question for me again.
No, I'm saying, do you think it's flattery that we're seeing with in terms of all the young people we're now seeing on the political platforms?
Well, I would think so, but Aristotle was a well-known philosopher, and I'm not sure if many Dominicans would know who Aristotle is, but
Hmm.
people like Aristotle and Plato and Socrates, they basically paved the way for morality,
Mm.
where the human race is concerned. And one of the things that Aristotle advises against is politics is not for a young mind.
That's
Yes,
that's
and I've read a lot of his work. In fact, I remember when I had picked an interest with respect to the political arena, and I remember at that time I was advised that I was too young. So the general idea of involving young people in politics at this occasion is really an attempt to sort of garner the support base of our youth voters. Everything the DLP does, it does with a specific intent and purpose, which
Mhm.
already outlined or has already been outlined in a strategy which might have been done a long time before it was actually implemented. And persons need to be aware of that. So what they see actually happening is just sort of like the rolling out of that
Hmm.
strategy. So the involvement of flattery and this, if you realize the campaigns are heavily focused around an idea, a sort of for lack of a better word, it's focused around having like a party,
Yes.
and the
Hmm.
Dominican culture involves a lot of partying where
Well,
we're free slaves, and the moment we were free, we continue to indulge in the pleasures of the world because we spent 400 years on a farm. So every opportunity that the young persons get to sort of party, they will jump up for that opportunity. To blow steam. In some cases, they do it to blow steam because there's little choice or nothing left to be done at that moment.
And we're not going to lose track of the discussion we're having, Dr. Triphi, because I want you to explore the other options as well. But
mhm.
Paul and Dr. Triphi, don't you also think that it is part of a distraction? The SeaWo and the partying, just have a good
Part of the
time,
hypnotic.
enjoy this SeaWo. In the meantime, I'm going to steal the country.
It's
This
part of
is
the
what the
hypnotic.
colonizers did. They gave us a Bible, and they gave us, a few trinkets, and then they stole our land.
It's a
It's
it's
part
it's
of
a
the
it's a
hypnotic
deflector, man.
concoction. It's a hypnotic concoction. The Bible is for the elders, the elderlies, the older ones. Okay? The Bible is for people like me and up. Jesus and all the prayers. and the shofar, you understand? That's for the, and then the siwo is for the younger ones.
That's very true.
Yes, continue your
Um,
thought, Paul.
I'm happy you brought up the Bible because essentially, one of the strategies of the Dominica Labour Party would have been to very deliberately diffuse the civil society, which undoubtedly involves the church. If you
Yeah.
recognize in Dominica, there is no organization or no serious organization, I would imagine, who is actually advocating for specific rights of specific interest groups. Dominica does not have a civil society. I
Yeah.
remember when I was president of the NYC, I had used that platform with every purpose to highlight matters that were of concern to young people and to bring the issues of young people to the powers that be. And even then, I've always been a very independent thinker, and I guess maybe by now you can already tell. I remember I made a statement with respect to the NYC, and I said publicly on the media that no decision should be reached in the cabinet of Dominica concerning young people without the involvement of youth. And one of the labor, what do you call them, operatives, actually reached out to me and tell me I needed to retract the statement. I say I'll do no such thing. I have a job to do and I'll continue to do it with the highest level of integrity. So when you see a society not having voices, and mark you, opposition in a country is a healthy thing.
Mhm.
You understand? Because you need persons to continue to advocate on that which is important, universally concerned
Hmm.
issues and topical issues so that the government can understand that there are things that need to be done other than their own self-serving interests. And that is why opposition is very healthy in any given society. At this point of our election cycle, you would expect I would not expect that from men of the cloth, so to speak. But the church is extremely silent on the matter.
Yeah.
One of the more utilized strategy of the DLP was to put to silent that segment of our society. That's why you see pastors and priests glorifying the leader of the country because they want no attempt to sort of ruffle any feathers for fear of not getting some sort of support,
Yeah.
whether economic or otherwise. So, in the absence of a very well functioning civil society, you find the attempt to hijack the government. And I say hijack the state because,
Hmm.
Dominicans, all of us need to understand that a state, a government, and a political party is two very different things.
Different.
A political party who wins is given the responsibility to govern the affairs of the state. That is the business of the public. But when you have a situation where the political party assumes that they're the government, then you have a problem. You're a legislator, which means that you have to put in place laws and policies to create the enabling environments for society, for communities to thrive. But you're not the government. You understand? And people need to understand that.
Yeah, thank you. And Doc, I don't want to lose track of the discussion. So thank you very much, Paul, for this great
No,
contribution. So we talked about flattery, right?
Yes.
So that is
Yeah.
the first step in victimization. Then you talked about guilt and shame. So
Yeah.
when flattery doesn't work, we take it to the next level. So let's talk about the next level.
We go to guilt and shame. Hmm. Who do you think you are? Why are you talking about this? When did I've had calls? People have called me. What happened to you? Are you okay? Hmm.
mm,
I never heard you use bad words before. Hmm. Yes. Guilt
that sounds
and
quite
shame.
familiar.
Yes. Right.
Right.
That's
Sounds
very
familiar, right?
familiar.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. And the thing again now, if the answer and the antidote is morality, as an individual, you have to have already worked out who you are and what you're about. So you have to already anticipate those things
Mhm.
coming at you and to already know you have your posture because you have worked this thing out with your
Right.
divine source.
Yeah, yeah. And even before you go to the next step, Doc, and sometimes we feel that everyone is a victim to what is going on in Dominica, but there are people who are standing on their morals. We
That's
have a
right.
Of
former
course,
neighbor.
yes.
We
Hmm.
have a former neighbor. She is in desperate need to help to fix her home, to help to, give more energy to her business. And she
Hmm.
keeps telling my mother, I will never go to a PAL rep. And people keep telling her, oh, just go to your PAL rep, they'll help you. Oh, just go to Prime Minister Skerrit, he will help you. And she is adamant because she stands on her moral footing.
Yes.
He says, I will not go and beg anyone for a favor. I will live with what I have. And if my Heavenly Father sees it fit to open up other opportunities for me, I will gladly accept it.
Amen.
So I
Yeah,
just want us to keep in mind that not everyone in Dominica is bending to the will of this politics
that's
that
right.
is going on in this country. But let's take the next step that you talked about where they try to hurt you. So
Yeah.
we're looking at victimization, the process of victimization. So first we talked about flattery. They will
Yes.
try to butter you up, like we
Yes.
would say, tell you, oh, you're the best for the job.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, it is geared towards their favor.
Yeah.
When flattery doesn't work, we talked about guilt and shame. Who do you think you are? You
Hmm.
shouldn't be speaking about the government. And
Hmm.
then the third one, they will try to hurt you.
The third one is actual threats, which are for me either veiled or keep talking and see if I don't say such and such about you. Keep talking and see if you won't lose your job. Or, a lot of people have lost their jobs from talking. Why you better watch out. You better watch out. Why you talking? Be careful. Aren't you afraid? You
Yeah,
see,
and then the
when the
next
actual threats.
Yeah, and then the next
Going
step
to
with
lose your
that, the next step with that is if you're not in Dominica, they can potentially threaten your family.
exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
you made a point I wanted to chime in on,
Yes, go ahead.
Dr. Simone. It is the whole question of go to your power.
Yeah.
Now, Dominicans need to understand that the slate of candidates who assume the position of power rep under the DLP led government is by far the most powerless candidates who then become ministers
Mm.
and senators in the entire political history of the Commonwealth of Dominica. In actual fact, what transpires is that PAREVs are seemingly supposed to address our concerns and our needs at a community level, take it up to the higher authority with the hope of getting some assistance. That does not happen to any great degree, neither is it expedited fast enough to alleviate the poverty that persons are associated with in the Commonwealth of Dominica.
As in the
So
case of
usually
Portsmouth.
what happens is somebody would go to their parrot routinely, but the parrot, even though he holds a ministry
Mm.
which with having some form of influence, but more importantly, representing thousands of people, is unable to reach a decision that he could change the life of of a resident of his community in a sort of timely manner, which allows for the persons to feel relieved from the economic or social pressure. Everything that transpires must stop with the leadership of the Dominica Labour Party. And that's how it does.
Yeah,
The,
yeah, and when you hear the prime minister talk about the parents who not answering their phones, well, no wonder they're not
that's
answering their phones
ridiculous.
and they're docking everybody. It's overwhelming. If you have thousands of constituents and they're all calling to beg for their daily bread, I would stop answering the phone too, because first of all, there's nothing you can really do to sustain people month after month after month. You can't give
Yeah.
handouts month after month after month. The red clinic is closed,
Well,
right?
of course it
So,
is,
so,
because
so,
it's
so I
for
would stop
one,
See?
answering the phone because I can't help you.
Yeah.
even where the NEP is concerned. For example, if somebody in Granby say they want a job on the NEP, it doesn't happen in any sort of expedient manner because a list must be drawn up. First of all, a list must be drawn up in Dominica. In the Kalinago territory, we're very we're very familiar with the question of lists. And I don't say that jokingly, but I say that just so that I can bring some level of, light on the matter. So in the Kalinango territory, we are familiar with lists. We always hear about lists. Your name on the list, your name not on the list. So in most cases, a list is always drawn up. And when that list is drawn up, it has to go to the cabinet of Dominica. And when it does, it must be vetted. Anyone who seems to be not in favor with the ruling party will not get a job. Anybody who is not expedient will not get a job. Anybody who does not maybe offer some tangible benefit, and I dare say in most cases involving their own selves, will not
Wow.
get a job. So it's a very barbaric system. And I stood for a while, and I had to go to the dear Lord because I felt just like Paul, the apostle,
Mm-hmm.
when he was persecuting the Christians and not realizing that which he was doing was bad
Yeah.
until the Holy Spirit revealed itself to him and he had a change of heart. And I felt like that because I would have led thousands of Dominicans to the fold of the Labour Party. I've
Mm-hmm.
worked with all the powers dating back to Mr. Grano Senior, well, Junior rather. And in a large part, the people of the Kalinago territory at Kingston and Teresa always saw the fact that I was involved in the party and the political process, that they saw someone that they could rally their support behind. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I began to understand, let me tell you something, the Labour Party is a barbaric party. It is a festering sore of
Mm.
so many levels of corrupt practices,
Grossness.
immoralities,
Mm-hmm.
uh, heavy cases of involving a great degree of financial crimes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, oh my God, I want every Dominican who's listening to my voice to commit themselves to prayer tonight, to ask the good Lord to lead us out of this Egypt, because I fear for my daughter and my son who is coming up after me. Huh?
Mhm.
And I guess every family, every Dominican should also fear for the well-being of their children.
Thank you for that. And of course, we want to go to the studio. It's the top of the hour right now. We want to go to the studio to Lambi as we welcome your calls, your contribution. We will also take your Facebook Live messages. And we still have a whole lot more to discuss because we want to talk, for example, Dr. Triphi and Paul, about the concept of learned helplessness. So,
Yeah.
what is that? What are we talking about when
Yeah.
we talk about learned helplessness? So, we're breaking down the political strategy that is keeping our people in Dominica voting for the same political party over and over and over again. And we can see, and I think we see it more as outsiders, that this is not really advancing Dominica in any significant way. We're very stagnant. I was in Dominica in June, and you literally feel stagnant. So we are breaking down the concepts, we're breaking down the strategy to see what is contributing to the fact that people keep voting in the same government, even when they don't have opportunities and they're not realizing the promises that is repeated every election cycle. So let me hand it over to you.
Good evening. The numbers are
Thank you.
449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257, 305-432-9624. Let me repeat this one more time. 449-3095, 96 and 97, 616-4257, 305-432-9624. Back to you, Simon.
Yes, thank you, Lambi. And let's go over to the Facebook. Thank you so much for everyone who's joining us via the Facebook Live. Let us take some comments. Dorian says, good night, greetings to all. Hope all is well, and everyone hoping to learn from what we'll be discussing tonight from the panel. Good evening to my mom, Mrs. Medina Senhouse. I see that you're locked in. Ernest later, always great to see you. Let's go ahead and take some of your comments. I want to take as many of them as possible because I'm truly grateful that you're joining in on the discussion this evening. So let's see what we have here. I scroll a little too fast, so let's go back up for just a little bit. We have Anthony Simon, carry water, carry wood, carry provision on our head for us to eat and drink. I can relate. Franklin, good night. He says good night. Anthony, if I needed to cool out, we went to take a sea or river bath. That was the only cool out you were getting. You weren't getting any money as a cool out. Pyro Pascal, I'm listening to your great program. Thank you, Pyro. Not nice, easy dog. Good evening to all. Kingdom citizen, blessing evening to all.
Amen.
Elliot Hippolyte, the propaganda machinery of this DLP is incredible. Dominica is like an example of a case study. The period in history should be preserved for the archives. It is
Yes.
almost parallel to what transpired during the rule of Hitler. Lambi, I'm keeping my eye on you just in case we have a call. So I'm going back and forth if you see my head, like I'm watching tennis. So, Rosie, yes, there's a call. So let's take the call.
Good evening, caller. Thanks for joining us. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, sir,
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
and good evening to your panelists.
Good evening, sir.
A
Good
joyous
evening,
program. I
sir.
am very elated about that program to listen to you all.
Thank you.
Continue the good works, my dear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Rosie Felix, appreciative from inputs from overseas academics. Thank you, Rosie. She said, Paul, good to see you and hear you. Thank you for that. Kingdom
Thank you, Rosie.
citizen can't understand why people are still begging our Scarrett for electoral reform when he know he's not going to give it willingly. Mass protest is the only way to go at this point. And again, my mom says, good evening, Mrs. Medina Senhouse, Rosie Felix. Just like the Red Clinic is a shadow social welfare division. Faith
Mhm.
Sunshine, great to have you. Good vibes. Edmund Rodney, the answer is yes. I guess he's answering something we talked about. Thank you, Edmund. Angus Frazier, nice open session. Thank you. Bernard Aline, good to see you, Bernard. Good night to all. Can we please get the doctor's Facebook or blog info because so that we can follow her? Oh, absolutely. Dr. Triphi, let me take a
Yeah.
pause here so you can give your information because I think we need more people to follow you because, you know, Doc, you have some energy. You have what we call in Dominica, La Lina. And you know, you are so committed to the cause in Dominica. You are on those Facebook lives just about, is it every day?
You know what it is? I just cannot bear it anymore. You see how
Yeah.
you talk about that you when you know and you see and you're watching the thing play out and it's like so many people don't realize it's playing out and you're
Mhm.
like, "Hey! Wake up!" That's
Yeah.
what I feel like and I feel like so many of our people are in a deep sleep like a fond sommeil. And I'm
Mhm.
like, wake up. I'm not asking you to stop loving whomever it is you're loving.
Mhm.
Like, okay, please, however, look at what's in front of you, look at the results, and consider, just consider making a different choice if you want a different result.
Mhm.
I mean, it's that simple, you know.
Mhm.
And y'all can follow me on the not professional page. So my professional page is Dr. Triphi on Facebook. My not professional page, which some people were trying to call me to task for, they said, "You're not sounding professional." Listen, Dominica can study professional. You understand? That's and
What is that page?
I, I realized it when I was doing my regular Thursday night Dr. Triphi stuff. You know, my voice, the doctor voice. They don't want to hear the doctor voice, not that doctor. They want to hear Dr. Tripping voice.
Mhm.
That's the one they listen to. The
Yes.
vibration is different. You understand? And I
Yeah,
understand.
and it's because you connect with the people, Doc. You speak our language and you're able to take the psychological concepts and break it down into an understanding that we can relate to. So which page
Yeah.
is that we can follow, Dr.
That
Truthful?
page is Margaret Wallace. Okay?
Okay.
Margaret Wallace. Look
Margaret
out,
Wallace.
basket. Just now I'm gonna change it to Dr. Tripping. Okay?
Okay, hold on. We have a call coming in. We'll come back, Doc.
Yes, caller. Thank you very much for your patience. You please go ahead.
Lambi, good evening. How are you doing? It's glad to hear you've been absent for a while. Hope you're better now.
Much better.
Good night, Dr. Simone, Dr. Triphi, and Mr. Barron. Good
Good
evening.
night. Good
Good
evening.
Nice
evening.
to
Topic
you.
and conversation and contribution. What is the genesis of this whole supposed psychology of Roosevelt Carey? First of all, he doesn't have a political ideology nor political philosophy. Those are beyond his little brain to contemplate or even discuss. His thing was simply this. There was a problem with people in the rural areas living comfortably. They were very independent, extremely independent. They had no mortgages, they had no car notes, they educated their children from their farms. So the first thing of socialism plus communism is to divide the society into rich and poor and create confusion. The best way you can control people is to remove their independence, make them dependent on the state providing them with whatever they need. They don't have to work, but they don't realize in the process they are surrendering themselves because the state now owns you. The state decides when you eat, how you eat, and they even know when you should go to the bathroom because if they don't give you food, they know you can't go to the bathroom. So after they have done that, the first thing they destroyed the productive sector. So people didn't have work. Then they turned the welfare department into a red clinic.
Mm-hmm.
And if your baby was sick, you had to go get a FENZIP. You went to the prime minister, and not even a regular minister, no longer the welfare department. You went to the prime minister. You needed burying a dead, you went to the prime minister. Anything happened, you knock your toe, you had to go to. So they reduced the people to this dependency. As a result, those young persons under 36 years of age have no idea of what governance in Dominica looked like prior to the arrival of Kerry. If you ask any one of them now who is the minister of any particular ministry, they have no idea. And so those are the people, after they destroy the independence of the parents to provide for their children and themselves, they now take over, where mothers had to facilitate some of these people at their home so that the children could probably get maybe a scholarship, maybe to buy some sugar, maybe to buy something. And this is what has happened. And then to add insult to injury, he twinned the Dominica Labour Party with the Chinese Communist Party. He didn't just, he twinned it. In other words, the Dominica Labour Party and the Chinese Communist Party one and the same. And this is part of the problem, whereas the Labour Party had a philosophy, all shall eat. Kerry's new motto is, some shall eat all. And this, herein lies the problem. And the most significant contributor to that factor are two areas. The Constitution that he inherited because they never anticipated someone like Roosevelt Perry coming to power. And secondly, our judicial system facilitated Perry in the process of dehumanizing Dominicans and turning them into, I don't know if you all recall the story of one of these German generals that defeated a chicken, totally defeated the chicken, and then have the chicken walking behind him and dropping grains of rice as he goes. The chicken is defeated in pain, but it's following him there for the grain of rice. And this is what has been done to our young people who are all unemployed. They are unemployed, they don't have jobs. Even
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your contribution. Yes, we have another call coming in.
Good evening, caller. Thanks for coming. Go ahead, please.
Hello, hi, good evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening, sir.
Yeah, let me just say that I'm thoroughly enjoying the program, Dr. Mathieu and your guest.
Thank you.
And the topics that you guys are discussing are so important. And as you were discussing it, I was thinking about the reality that I got in 2014 as a candidate. And I remember talking to a young man in my constituency and trying to impress him about the good old days of the village when we used to work hard, go to the garden before school and carry our water and so on, how, it took me somewhere. And then he looked at me straight in the eye and said, I don't have to do that. My mom can always go to the prime minister. And that was one of the most shocking moments of my life because at that point I realized that Dominica was in deep trouble, that we potentially could lose an entire generation of young people because they were not being encouraged to work hard, they were not being encouraged to go to school, they were not being encouraged to do things that we knew and we valued as young people. And I realized that the country was in trouble. But we don't have to look at the situation in Venezuela, for example, where we have a very similar situation to what exists in Dominica today. This question of dependency, Chavez built homes for people. He basically told people they don't have to work, they can depend on the state for their every need. And we saw that experiment went drastically wrong. In the past couple of years, Venezuela has lost about 7 million people to migration. People have simply left because those same homes that they were given free of charge are now in disrepair. They are not working. They can fix it. They are not able to earn a living. There are no jobs, and they have sunk into despair. And I fear that we are approaching a very similar situation in Dominica. So I think it's a good thing to have a program like this because, and I'm hoping that it awakens that desire, in particular within our young people to search for an alternative way because the way that we are now, the track that we are now, is certainly not the way to go. Yeah, I could say a lot more, but I just wanted to make that point about the dependency and really lend my voice to your very brilliant guest tonight.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. And anyone who follows me and my family will tell you that is an example that I use over and over of that young boy who said to his mom, who said to our caller, I don't have to do all those things, school and all that stuff. My mom can just go beg the pal rep or the prime. So I use that example all over because, like the caller said, I too was shocked to hear that story. So let me just take a couple more comments and then we will jump back into the discussion. Faith Sunshine, yes, their truth to power. Judith Cochran, great discussion. Elliot, the system has been carefully crafted to keep us against each other. That is a strategy of the incumbent and to keep its base. Thank you for that, Elliot. Rosie Felix, people get fired, penalized when they steal and cheat on the job, but celebrate their leader who does the same. Powerful. Unfortunately, let's hear from someone we haven't heard from before. Colson Shillingford, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good program. Thank you. Faith, yes, the young people on the new platform are being brainwashed and given the stick and the carrot mentality. Shabin Robin, good evening to all. I must say, great program. Take a bow and indeed learning. I'm glued. Thank you, Shabin. Carlson, that is what I'm saying too, because if you see the history of the past, it is very true. Young people in politics. Elliot, let's see what Elliot is saying. The company in focused on a one happy family. The campaign is focused on a one happy family strategy. During the campaign period, people get numb and they get numb from their reality. Let me take that one more time. The campaign in focused on a one happy family strategy. During the campaign period, people get numbed from their reality. So we will come back. We will come back and take some more of your comments. And I want to thank you for posting your comments and for your phone calls. Doc and Paul, any comments on the comments? Any feedback you want to provide?
I actually wanted to chime in on the caller the before the last with respect to the rural communities. I consider the privilege and the honor to have been born in the 1980s. I was born in 1985. So for me, I had the experience of Dominica where it meant that rural communities literally drive the economy. And we're talking about farmers, we're talking about fisher folks, construction workers. There was a lot of activities happening back then, but it created a level of independence that the children are always very well fed. Parents will be able to um, educate their children, and a vast majority of Dominicans now, even occupying the public service, was actually trained because of the experience their families had raising them on the farm, and also the returns that was able to get from and the rewards that they got from farming. But when I took a closer look at the Dominica Labour Party and I looked at the Kalinango territory or the Salibe constituency as a case study, I saw that happening before my very eye, whereby the level of chronic dependence that was being created or the state of poverty, because there was a documentary that was done in Haiti, and it is called Poverty Inc. I'm not sure you can. It's probably on Netflix. It's on poverty. It's called Poverty Inc. And the situation that was created is that the population or segments of the population is deliberately kept poor as an opportunity to derive earnings from. So, for example, for as long as the Salibe constituency continues to be in the position that it is, there will always be the need to sort of be on this grand fund seeking attempt and to highlight the indigenous people of Dominica as a way of getting monies into the coffers of men and women and subsections of the society. So when I looked at that, and I always see what's happening in the Salibe constituency vis-a-vis the rest of the country, because it appears that same model was then utilized, beta tried and tested in the Salibe constituency and then utilized in the rest of the island. So we have a situation where rural communities are extremely impoverished. I was speaking with a young man yesterday and he said, Paul, there are persons who are at rock bottom who may not have eaten a proper food in 2 to 3 days. And that is the reality in Dominica. This grandstanding and fanfare and blowing up of pictures indicating that homes were built. The responsibility of a government is to provide public goods to begin with. If you see a reasonable cause to provide housing for people, it is not a matter to be utilized for any campaign and politicking and treating. If you're looking at helping people to come out of poverty and to enhance their livelihoods, let that be a matter between you and the good Lord. But you don't use that as an attempt to have sort of a whip on the larger population to indicate that your turn will come. Your turn will come. I mean, we have had situations in the Kalinago territory where people waited 20 years for a house to be built for them, And every Dominican should consider that. How long will it be? And you have to ask yourself the question, are you any better off today than you were before? So I'm really happy the caller shared that with respect to the rural community, because that is where the larger population of Dominicans are.
Yeah.
We're not in the urban centers. We're in the hills and the valleys, and that is where the pressure is real. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for that, Paul. Doc, let me come over for your feedback from the Facebook posts and the calls. And also, let's jump into the concept of learned helplessness while we're at it. Because I don't think, without having this sort of conversations, I don't think we really know what is happening to us. So by putting the names out there, putting the concepts out there, I think it will give us a better understanding of what is being done to us on a psychological level that is keeping us in a state where we are dependent, but still supporting the people who keep us dependent. So your comments on the Facebook Live, and then let's jump into learned helplessness. The clock is never on our side with this program, so I have to keep my eye on the clock.
Somebody, Wilworth Robin, is asking, is it possible to reverse that dependency mindset in our young adults at this stage of their life?
That
or
was one
have
of
we
the
to focus
points.
on preschool and primary school?
That's one of the points we're coming to.
Look, I think the medicine, you got to go to the root of the tree if you're going to bear fruit that nuts. What they call it? You used to have mango tree with worms in it.
Avote.
Avoid all. There's some mango tree, the mango long. We had a mango long tree like that in our yard. This is Dr. Tripping just popping out every now and then, right? I mean, I grew up in cottage in the country, so we had tons of mango trees in the yard. But there was one that always bore wormed fruit, So that's the tree you could never depend on that.
Well, interestingly, Doctor, it is
Yes,
said that if they said, do not be envious of doers, for a little longer they will be cut off. And the
yes,
real and the blatant truth is that in order to transform the situation in Dominica in any drastic way, as I was
yes.
indicating to somebody yesterday, it requires a tectonic shift, and
It,
it really involves cutting the tree.
Mm-hmm.
or you can look at it as water. Say you have a cup of water that's dirty, right? And if you want to, you can clean that water out, but you got to
Right.
put it under the faucet and let the pure, clean water pour itself into that cup for as long as it needs to clear out that dirty water. Eventually, you will
Right.
have clean water. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what has to happen because this is mental. And in psychology, we understand that the universe is mental. This is where we create from. So if this
Right.
is a wormed tree, the fruit is going to be wormed. So that's a swath of our generations or population that has to essentially just work its way out. And we
Mm-hmm.
will face many problems we didn't anticipate and we're not prepared for because we've never had to deal with them before, like the 17 young people who have killed themselves and each other this year. That's the
Mm-hmm.
fruit. That's the wormed fruit. We're like, oh, wele. That's the wormed fruit.
Yeah, you're very right. You're
Mhm.
very right.
But before we go on reversing it, because that is an important part of the conversation as well, tell us, Doc, about learned helplessness, because I think it applies brilliantly to what we're talking about.
Okay, so break the words apart. Learned helplessness. Essentially, a person can become helpless through behavioral conditioning. Okay, how does that happen? I think Dominica, as a collective, was ripe for that kind of system. Why? Because we were severely traumatized as a people. Reverse everybody and go back to Rosie Douglas, and
Mm-hmm.
Pero,
Hmm.
their Charles dying back to back. How often does the leader of any country die while they're serving?
That's
Usually they
very
get
rare.
over, right? And they die at a certain point, but they're not the figurehead of the country when they die. You had one die. How long was it between Rosie and Pierre Charles's death? Not long. So the
Mm-hmm.
collective had not even recovered or healed from that passing
Mm-hmm.
when the next one died. And there you have a young, dimpled, handsome Pope. And I know everybody was excited for the most part, right? Excited. Oh my God. Okay. And all of the nations, whatever, all of people's energy went towards supporting this young leader to help us recover from this trauma. It was a collective trauma event. The first one, and before you even had a chance to recover, boom. Well, let me tell you, if you want to hypnotize a person, shock them, and you have
Mm-hmm.
an opening to put in whatever you want
Yep.
to put in. Whatever you want to put in, if a person is in the state of being wide open, yes. Now, again, I don't even know that our prime minister knew that this was the path he was choosing or setting out on. Perhaps along the way, and just go back because back then, how young was he? He didn't know how to be a leader. Would you put a young person to lead this is a huge,
Difficult time. Yeah.
yes, difficult time. Yes, he had graduated from with a bachelor's degree, Would you put someone with a bachelor's degree in psychology to run a government at that age without having had all of this life experience where you finish your moral development, you've learned how to process ethical dilemmas? You know, this was was a storm, if you ask
Mhm.
me, or
Mhm.
think of it as a bomb. And we lean into things that seem easier. It's very easy to say, come to the red clinic, versus do I trust the people to figure it out and, stumble their way through. You got to fight with life for you to get the best results. You were talking about it a minute ago, Paul, when
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
said we need the iron to sharpen the iron.
Right.
Opposing forces, you need people yelling at you as the prime minister and saying, no, we don't like that, no, do it like this instead. But it's
Right.
so easier to be like, hey,
Mhm.
let me smile at
Practice,
you. I'll
practice
help.
this resistance.
Yes, yes, yes,
Hmm.
yes, yes,
Hmm.
yes. So
But,
that
but, Doc, let me also add to what you're saying because I think you're leading us in the right direction. But I want us to listen to this carefully and let me know on Facebook and if you want to call in, if you can relate to what this says. Learned helplessness is a state that occurs after a person has experienced a stressful
trauma,
situation
trauma after
repeatedly.
trauma.
They come to believe that they are unable to control or change the situation, so they do not try.
They do nothing.
Even when opportunities for change become available.
Yes,
Learned helplessness occurs when someone repeatedly faces uncontrollable, stressful
yes,
situation, then does not exercise control when it becomes available.
yes.
They have learned that they are helpless in that situation and no longer try to change it, even
On their
when
own.
change is possible.
Yes.
Once a person having this experience discovers that they cannot control events around them, they lose motivation. Even if an opportunity arises that allows the person to alter their circumstances, they do not take actions. Individuals experiencing learned helplessness are often less able to make decisions.
Solve their problems.
Can we
Yes.
relate?
Yes.
Very much
So the
so.
trauma, the repeated trauma. Okay, you have this right here, right? This big collective trauma, two big ones. And you have a new system in office, right?
Mhm.
That starts to figure its way out, and they're coming at you with new processes like the Red
Mhm.
Clinic and Come to Me, right? The country was in shock. People were in shock. And over time, all of this stuff where we start coming to the separation of, if you're red, you're great. If you're blue, you are wicked, horrible, mischievous, and no, 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 negative. If you don't support us, you're not one of us. Continuous victimization of people. Listen, this is about survival. There are many people, I mean, a lot of us think we would have been on the right side of slavery if we were, say, European.
Hmm.
A lot of us think we would have been like abolitionists, but we wouldn't. We would be doing what we're doing right here with the Labour Party. You understand? A lot of us think we would not be with the folks who supported Hitler when they were just destroying the Jews.
Mhm.
I don't think so, based on what I'm seeing of people who are okay with their neighbors who support the United Workers' Party not getting opportunities and opportunities being removed from them, etc., etc. How
Mhm.
different is it? So the
Mhm.
learned helplessness situation now is like, yo, this stress is coming at me relentlessly. This force is so much bigger than I am. I don't know what to do. And so, like you can see dogs do it sometimes, like puppies, animals do it, where they just sort of play dead,
Mhm.
Yeah. Like a
and they,
Mhm.
possum.
like a possum, and the energy goes out of them when it comes to fighting. To
Mhm.
fighting, the thing though, to succeed in life, you must wrestle with life. You must fight with life.
Mhm.
if you want any chance of really being your best self.
Yes, and that we have to talk about how do we reverse this mindset. You know, we've presented the evidence. We've seen that in the 70s, the 60s, and beyond, we were certainly more independent. We don't have to outline everything that made us more independent. We were more independent in terms of free
It's
speech.
clear.
Had our own jobs, we had our land, we had our homes. So it is clear. There's no need to delve into that. Further, we've talked about, you know, the implications, the generational implications of this mindset, this mind control that is going on in Dominica. And we're just shedding the light. We're shedding the light on the political strategy. So if you joined us late, we're talking about the political strategy to control the mindset of Dominicans, to keep Dominicans dependent so that they will keep re-electing the same regime that keeps them dependent, right? So now we have to spend some time before we wind down for the evening to talk about, and Facebook, thank you again for suggesting that. It was on the list of topics to discuss, but thank you for bringing it out. How do we reverse this?
Okay.
Is it impossible? It took 20 years to create this dependence mindset. Will it take 40 years if
Not
another
necessarily.
political party comes in to reverse it?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily, but it is going to take
Right, Alex?
sustained effort and commitment. It is going to take
Yeah.
sustained effort and commitment because this is a moral, I said it earlier, this is a spiritual problem. Mm. It's a moral fix. It's a moral fix. Okay, the babies, the primary schoolers, the high schoolers, they need the injection. How do you reason?
Yes, right, Alex.
What is to be
Hold on a second. Lambi, I think we can hear you on the phone. Lambi, we can hear you. Okay, go ahead, Doc. Hopefully he
yes,
can.
this is
Hopefully he
the
can
fix
mute
is
his mic.
moral.
Alvin,
The fix is a moral fix.
Alvin,
Okay. I think if we can get, I don't know that this is going to be part of anybody's curriculum, as in
yeah,
we
yeah.
know who's ruling,
Long
we
time,
know who's the
long
ruling
time.
party. So we know who's the ruling party. So I do not anticipate that they're going to inject the students'
I'll tell
companion and lessons on morality into the curriculum. I'm not anticipating that.
you.
But I think people of right thinking,
I'm in the studio.
I think people of right minds
Yeah, I'm in the
who
studio.
have access need to start doing this
On
with children,
Dr.
with
Okay,
kids,
yeah.
teaching
Let me say that now.
kids how to think, how to reason. Okay? How to reason. This is a moral question and it must be addressed at that level or higher. I heard many people today talking, and really, I think a lot of people are opening their eyes and realizing you, we are body, mind, spirit. You must engage the spirit in this fight. This is an
Yeah.
energetic thing. You must engage the spirit in this fight because it's become entrenched. It's become mummified, like Paul said.
You
Yeah,
know,
and let me just apologize. I think we were
yeah.
hearing Lamb in the background, but I hope you got the gist of what Dr. Triphi was saying. So I do apologize for the feedback in the background. Paul, go ahead, please.
You know, you brought a very interesting perspective where our current predicament is concerned, and you highlighted the aspect of spirit, and I want to lend that to the whole question of leadership. When Dominica was on a trajectory, and I must say to the Dominican public that we were at one point the envy of the Caribbean. All right.
Yes, sir.
Many of our systems that we had developed and was working very effectively and efficiently were used as blueprints for other regional islands. They took from us what was good and they implemented it within their systems. But for a large part, our Dominican society was being governed by men and women who understood the true nature of leadership. And leadership is a matter of civic responsibility. Contribution to nation building and development is the most critical aspect of any metropolitan state. The
Yes.
United Nations, the United Kingdom, France, Germany are all built on the fact that the people understand that primarily their civic responsibility is to contribute to national development. And the
Nation.
leaders enforce that. It is perpetuated within their societies. What we have in Dominica is that we are far removed from that experience. So if you look at leaders of the past, and I don't need to mention any names there, but there are quite many honorable men and women who led in that form. Now, if you fast forward after the 80s into the 2000s, you find the situation and the experience now we're having with leaders who were ill prepared.
Yes.
You mentioned that, and you're very right,
Yeah.
and that is why I utilize the analogy or the example that Aristotle gave, that politics is not for the young of mind, because it requires some level of competency and exposure to deal with matters of national interest, a crisis here and there. You
Yeah.
understand? If a man bunks his toe in Tukari, ultimately it becomes your responsibility. So what we found ourselves doing was to entrust the business and the affairs of nation building to persons who were ill prepared. And what we have seen happening now is the extreme repercussions and the sort of seeping through the social fabrics where young people find it, you know what, it really isn't it doesn't mean that I have to work as hard to get where I need to go. you know
Mhm.
Maybe I can just chill out.
Yeah.
Maybe I can just stay on the block. Maybe I can wait for when these benefits are passing through. You understand me? And that is where now I'm truly heartbroken for our own generation. And I know millennials are catching health because we're having babies, we're having families now, we're married in, we need to build homes.
Yeah.
We're the ones that are supposed to support the tax base after our parents and our grandparents finally transition. Who is going to support the development of the country if they themselves are not empowered to do so? Our earlier generations are buying in to this wave of information coming across from the United States and other metropolitan states. This whole pop culture, which only seems, which only is geared only to sort of get involved in social media and post, on a daily basis to tell people what you're doing with your life.
Mhm.
Our
Yes.
young people, our young people don't realize that social media is a tool. When
Yeah.
Mhm.
Facebook was created, it was a specific tool, and
Yeah.
marketing was at the heart of it. I have a very active social media presence. I have more than 10,000 followers combined. But
Yeah.
when I post information out there, I wanted to have an impact and a transformation, a
Yeah.
transformative change in somebody's life.
Mhm.
So the leaders are not even, I mean, when last have you heard a minister of government, a parlor rep, a senator giving any credible advice to young people in the Commonwealth of Dominica? Where do
Just
you
a
hear
void.
that?
Just an
Mhm.
absence of this.
Where do you hear a leader, someone in clergy, someone in the evangelical community coming up and saying, let us take a concerted effort to give direction to our young people? It's like they have taken this hands-off approach.
Yes.
You
There's a
know,
vacuum. There's a
it's a huge
void.
vacuum.
There's a
You know,
void. And
so
within that space, a lot of this political fervor has come in. And it's
exactly,
been
and that
perfect to
is where
separate
that
us.
is where it goes, it
Yeah.
grows, and that is where it is used,
Yeah.
as a strategy, as we're now discussing, to sort of manipulate the population. And a lot
Absolutely.
of people are absent from some of the things that are happening in politics, except if you ask someone routinely in most cases about the political landscape in Dominica, they're only able to identify the prime minister, or maybe the president or the likes, but they
Yeah.
Mhm.
don't understand the inner workings of any government ministry to their own benefit. And
Mhm.
something I've always frowned on. Look at our situation in as far as education is concerned. The Ministry of Education is supposed to arrive at a priority list in terms of academic fields that are needed in the country. There
Mm.
is no I have a lot of good friends at the Ministry of Education. No offense intended, but when I speak of matters of national interest. There is no direction or serious commitment to train the population
Yeah.
in a way in which they can capitalize on the information flows. or the pace of the world at this point in time. Look at the Dominica experience. When last have you heard someone graduating from school as a marine biologist?
Mm.
You understand? Or somebody involved in water technology,
Yeah.
somebody involved in information technology and the likes. You have managers and you have doctors, no offense intended.
Mm-hmm.
But these fields are extremely saturated.
Yeah.
You
But,
understand?
also, Paul, if I might add, we see a lot of a lack of national policies on many levels, and I think
Precisely.
that is part of the strategy.
There's
Because
no direction.
if you plan on keeping people dependent, why would you have a national policy on education?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because you're
And
just
that
going to
and that
keep
is
them
it. And that
dependent,
is
so
it.
there's no need to direct them in any particular direction.
The youth policy is something that I had argued very passionately along with my former um, past presidents in its development. Now, the youth policy is something that was supposed to bind the government into making some serious changes with regards to young people in Dominica, involving entrepreneurship, involving academia and the likes. And I recall when this matter was being discussed, and I was so passionate about it. I was even asked, as president of the National Youth Council, I was even asked by the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Youth that I could not comment on the policy, as president of, why? Because the thrust I was going at it, it would always involve it going in the sphere of the media and people understanding and knowing that which it is, and it would of course put the government under serious commitment. So rather than taking the youth policy and going to parliament, it I'm not even sure where it is, dusting away on a shelf. But you'd have situations to suppress the population. You'd
Right.
run to parliament to pass the Anti-Terrorism Act, which says that you can't protest because a protest would be seen as being terror, an act which spreads terror.
Terrorism. Hmm.
You understand me? So everything the Labour Party has gone to Parliament for the last 20 years has been for the sole purpose of meeting its own selfish interests. So Dominica, let me tell you something. Dominicans, I don't know how I can say this more to you. We are on a dangerous path.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And thank you both, Paul and Dr. Triphi. You guys are such wonderful contributors to this program. So I really want to thank you for always being available and always making some such very informed and detailed contribution. And we really have to think this through carefully, because yes, we're having this conversation on the mindset change and the mind control that's going on in Dominica to keep Dominican independence. And people have a right to be concerned, because
Yeah.
They
if
do.
there is a fear of losing your job,
I
your
mean,
ability to feed your family, your ability to pay your bills, your ability to take care of your children and send them to school, that is a real concern. So,
Absolutely.
yes, we might be talking about the mindset change and the mind control and everything, but we also have to look at it in a very realistic way. That yes, you have to toe the line, because there are only so many jobs available in Dominica. And if you dare to speak out, you dare to express a different opinion that is not in favor of the strategy of the government, you will quickly find yourself out of a job. So I want
Yeah.
to thank everybody for being here. We must take some more of the Facebook comments, because we've had some wonderful contributions coming, and then we want to come back to you, Doc and Paul, for your final thoughts on this program. So let's see here. Anthony Simon, why are the church so quiet on all the ongoing regarding the snap elections? That's a good question. Let's take some comments from folks we haven't heard from yet. Marshall, great to see you. Greetings, listening. Augustina John out there in Ontario, Canada. Always great to see you. Good evening, Dr. Matthew and the rest of the panel. Brampton, Ontario, Canada is watching. Great to have you on board. Augustina Coulson, no one should not go to no ministers for nothing. Thank you. Rosie Felix, Palrep, send the beggars to the PM, who must screen and find out your political status before you get help. Truly unfortunate. Claralyn Warrington, greetings to all. I'm watching and listening. Thank you for being here. Octave Eagle Mike, good evening. Gito Roye. We can see it. Thank you, Eliza. Good evening, everyone. Great program, Augustina. I don't think that the people keep voting the same government over and over again. The elections are rigged over and over again. That is why it's scary. Scorned political reform. So, guys, thank you so much. This is some incredible contributions.
Very
Emma
much.
Thomas, good to see you. Yes, I agree. We are a case study. It will be interesting for the future. David Johnson, another top fan, thank you for being here. A warm and pleasant good evening to each and every member of the panel. Very edifying and interesting discussion. Thank you. Let's see. Bree Senhouse, my sister, great to have you on board. I think I saw another comment, so I'll take it lower down. Pat Aaron, great to have you on board. Truth talking on display. Keep it up. Paul Barron and the two women doctors. That's an interesting way of putting it. Wilma, Robin, is it possible to reverse that dependency mindset in our young adults? I think we talked about that. Thank you, Wilma. Edmund, thank you. Natalie Graham, we are in the same city rational as Venezuela, and even more so Dominica is under demon spell, but God is above to show himself. Of course, this is only the opinions of the folks on the Facebook Live, not necessarily the opinions of Q95. Axel, DA is 70% rural. Thank you for that. Someone else we haven't heard from. Norris Charles, Dominicans are destroying their country and expect regional and international organizations to save them while they war and accept malpractice and dictatorship. Emma Thomas, imagine there are jobs open in Dominica and people just can't fill them. Thank you for that. Let's take just a couple more before we wind down. Bree Senhouse, excellent discussion, folks. Hope that those of us who need to hear this are tuned in. Kingdom citizen, putting a 31-year-old to lead a country was absolutely madness. And just a couple more. David Joseph, Emma Thomas, anytime someone is getting free money, they will never want to work. Decades ago, we had a similar problem here in the US with the welfare system. Absolutely true. It wasn't until the welfare to work program was instituted, we saw a paradigm shift in the mentality of especially young women. One more, Anton George. The only way to fight that demon, well, we're not going to use that word, that dependent strategy from our people is for people on the opposite side, people with morals, to create jobs, clear business all over the island, and employ them or find another way to help them financially. Good morals is true, but the young people don't see morality as the primary weapon. And that is what we do here on Roots Connections. It's all about trying to create financial independence so that we're independent in thought. And, we're going to have a follow-up program. So just mark your calendar, December 14th. We're talking about the importance of critical thinking, because I think that too is a solution in terms of getting people to that financial independence so that they can be independent in making other decisions. Robert, great to have you on board. Brilliant discussion from the panel. Paul's insight on the political psyche was remarkable, spot on. Jonah, thanks for the good information. St. Martin in the house. Sandra, Fabian, Jennifer, Winsty, everyone is here. Jared, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for being here. And thank you for your comments and your contribution. So let me take it back to the panel again. Thank you, guys, for always being willing to come on the program and for sharing your insight and your expertise. So we will start with Paul for your final thoughts.
I just wanted to say that in most cases, Dominicans recognize where they are. It might be hard to accept, but they know that they require change. I see this political cycle as a cleansing period in terms of parties reaching the specific lifespan. And out of all of this, when the dust is settled, we expect a new movement to emerge. And if you look at regional politics, international politics, it will tell you that there are those Dominicans who are deeply concerned, but also are governed by morals and faith and certain principles and statutes, who wants to make a definite change. And Dominicans should look forward to that, and understand that we cannot continue to stay in the same predicament that we are. And I just want to continue to encourage every Dominican, in the best of your own ability, recognize where you are in your respective lives and try to influence change at your community level. I want to wish everybody well and their families, and God bless you, and God bless every Dominican.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Paul. Dr. Triphi?
Yes. Okay. So, what I would say is we're all human beings and we're all susceptible to pressure, emotional pressure, psychological pressure, flattery, threats, guilt, shame. Those things work on us because we are human beings, and we have our own individual psychology and stories and reasons why we are that way. I want to encourage, I will say, the remnant of us, those of us who remember what it is to be Dominican, those of us who remember to be brave, and to lean into our morality to help us weather this storm long enough. Remember, Maria? Lots of people, when I went home to work with teachers and other people to help them process that trauma, a lot of them said Maria felt like the longest night. But that night ended. The night, it will not always be night. It will not always be night. And so hold on long enough, be brave, and find ways, create ways, those of us who remember, to follow the leading of our hearts, to transpose that knowledge that we know about what it is to be Dominican, and use our morality to guide us. Use your morality to guide you. And that's what I want to offer tonight.
Thank you.
Yes,
Brilliant.
yes, thank you. Thank you, guys. And of course, thank you everyone for listening via Q95 Radio. Thank you for joining us on the Facebook Live, for your incredible contributions. Of course, thank you to Mr. G and the Q95 family for allowing us the opportunity to come here and to kind of break down these concepts and kind of take a look at how it can be a political strategy to keep our Dominican brothers and sisters dependent, so that they have no other choice but to keep voting in the same government. And I am with the Facebook Live poster who said that it starts with financial independence. Because if you've been following me all along the way, I am like a broken record. And I gladly accept being a broken record, because in order for people to be independent in their thinking and in their choices, they have to know where their meals are coming from. They have to know how their bills are getting paid. So as we're going along with the program, I hope we can figure out ways to create financial opportunities in this very digital and international world, so that folks can feel free to speak up, because they're not dependent on the government for financial resources. And I think that is truly where we will begin to see a change. And that change will lead to the changing of the mindset of Dominica. And we know they're listening to this program. We know that they're tuned in this program, and we know that they will have a combative strategy for what we are proposing. But you know what? The ruling party does not control the world. So if we can use our resources from out of Dominica to create jobs for folks in Dominica, then they become more independent. So I hope you will continue to follow us. I hope you will continue to subscribe to Q95 FM Radio on Facebook and YouTube, as well as Push Past 10, Q95DA.com for all the best in programming. And I hope you will continue to follow us as we work to improve the financial independence of Dominica. So again, thank you to the panel. Thank you for being here. Thank you for everyone who contributed to the program, and thank you for everyone who listened. And of course, you want to check out pushpast10.com, pushpast10.com, for all the best in terms of how Dominicans around the world are excelling what we are out there doing to put a positive light on our beautiful nature island, Dominica. So again, this has been Roots Connections on Q95. I am your host, Simone Mathieu, and we look forward to being back with you on December 14th as we continue to discuss topics of national and personal importance. So with that, we say good evening and have yourself a wonderful Thanksgiving if you're here in the States. And if you're not in the States, take a moment to celebrate and be thankful for life and for every blessing that you have been given. So guys, thank you again. Say
Thank
good
you.
night to the folks.
Good night, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Lambi. Thank you, Shan.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Lambi.
Good night, Lambert.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Triphi, I will see you on the Facebook Live.
Yes, ma'am.
Paul, I will follow you as well. As
All
always.
right. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Take
guys.
care.
Yo! Rastafari.